Okay, so just a couple of important things that you want to keep in mind with meiosis and mitosis, because people mix that up a lot, and meiosis can seem a little bit confusing. Meiosis is going to separate, meiosis 1 is going to separate homologous pairs of chromosomes, not sister chromatids. And I know for some people that's kind of confusing, so if you look here, I thought this would kind of help to kind of explain it. So you can see here I've got homologous chromosomes, right? This is like, let's say, chromosome number 2 from your mom and chromosome number 2 from your dad. So in meiosis 1, you're actually taking this entire one over here and this entire one over here, right? When we talk about meiosis 2, or also mitosis, because those are very similar, those are separating sister chromatids, right? So this is, you could say, is chromosome 2 and chromosome 2, but now we've got the little halves that are identical to one another getting split apart. So hopefully that kind of helps you to understand that. And we can always go over that in class if it's a little confusing. All right, so let's talk about the evolution of sex, because doesn't this sound like a lot of work, right? And I should mention, this is a great time to talk about the difference between male and female and how this stuff kind of works. So I'm going to clear my sweet drawing there. Okay, so I'm going to be very, very non-PC and use this for women. Okay, so what happens when women make eggs is, first of all, what you want to keep in mind is that we have our eggs that are immature versions of our eggs from the day we're born. So that's why age is such a big deal for us with childbearing, because our eggs just get older and older. Whereas it's believed that males are constantly making fresh sperm, so some more than others, but so that makes it a little bit easier for them to not have issues with getting older and having kids, right? So what happens with women that's also a little bit interesting is, so we have our original cell with the 46, and then, you know, that turns into the, you know what, I'm going to erase that. We'll just go a little easier. All right, so, all right. So we have our original cell, and what's going to happen is we're going to go through that first division, and what will happen with women is that one cell is going to pretty much get all of the stuff, and the other one's going to be a really small little division. And then when we do the next division, one cell's going to take everything, and then this one's just going to be useless. And then what happens here is that, like that. So with women, only one egg out of the 4 eggs that get created is really viable and perfect to send off for ovulation. In men, it's different. In men, it's completely equal. So what happens is you have that first division, and lovely, and then you have that second division. These are the worst arrows I've ever made, sorry. And they're all exactly the same. So they get 4 viable sperm, whereas with women, we only get really 1 useful egg. All right? So that's the difference between males and females. Now, let's talk about how this all evolved. So asexual reproduction is going to be not involving this at all. And asexual reproduction would be like if I was sitting here and then like a little mini fleur head and a little body just kind of like grew out of me and then broke off one day and became like a little mini me, which is like your worst nightmare come true. I know. That would be an example of asexual reproduction. It's an exact copy of my genes. I didn't get any information from anyone else, right? So on your PowerPoint, I believe I've got a picture, of a hydra, right? So that's something that lives in the ocean, and so those guys just do what's called budding, and they basically make a copy of themselves. Now, there could be drawbacks to that, right? The drawback could be, well, what if the genes that the original person had weren't that great, right? Now there's no way to get rid of them. Also, what if the environment changes and you need that variation, right? But on the other side of that, what if you're like the perfect genetic specimen, like me with my little mini-me, you know? Then it's a great thing, right? Okay, so that's going to be asexual reproduction. So if we go to how we think sexual evolution occurred, there's a couple of hypotheses. Some of them make a little bit more sense than others. So the first one is the DNA repair hypothesis. And that's saying that when that prophase 1 happens, when the homologous chromosomes match up, maybe that arose as a way to repair damaged DNA in the other chromosome. So that's a DNA repair hypothesis. That's doable. The other one is the contagion hypothesis, and this is basically saying that this is going to be something that occurred by that some sort of eukaryotic cell had mobile genetic elements like a sperm, if you think about how that's mobile, and that's how we got our whole sexual evolution. Then we have the red queen hypothesis, and that's saying that we have this dominant and recessive setup so that we can store those recessive genes without even showing them, and maybe that's important because those will become useful later. Perfect example is if you look at sickle cell anemia, right? People with sickle cell anemia, which is a recessive trait, they can actually be resistant to malaria, right? So maybe that's an idea about it. And then the Muller's ratchet hypothesis is something I've touched on already, and that's saying if you were reproducing asexually and some harmful mutation shows up, there's no way to get rid of it. Whereas with sexual reproduction, there's a 50% chance you might be able to get rid of that mutation and it won't show up. So that's going to be meiosis. I hope you enjoyed it. I know you'll never think about eggs and sperm the same way. You're welcome.